and he would go home, and he would put patients on home peritoneal dialysis, and implanting the catheters and having the solution being up there, coming by inflowing by gravity and then drain out again by siphoning. This was the first attempt of chronic peritoneal dialysis at home back in Seattle by Bowen. He even tried to have a permanent access to peritoneal cavity by developing this, what used to be called the Bowen's button, where between dialysis and after he had removed the catheter, he would have this button that he would try to keep it into the peritoneal, in the abdominal wall there, and then when he wanted dialysis, he would remove the button and insert the catheter. Excellent idea that I used it later on in another form, but unfortunately did not work. I think that the major impact on the chronic access is by this gentleman that is named Russell Palmer. He is a Canadian from Vancouver who had heard about the success, Scribner's success on developing the permanent Scribner shunt, the Quinton Scribner shunt that was made of silicone rubber. And he thought that perhaps it would be a great idea to develop a peritoneal catheter made of silicone rubber. He went down to Seattle from Vancouver, and he discussed with Quinton, which was the engineer who developed with Scribner the catheter, and he had an idea how the peritoneal catheter should look, and this is the Palmer catheter made of silicone rubber. And you see that the catheter starts from here, has a long part, and then there's this accordion type silicone rubber component on which the peritoneum was tightly tighted, and then there was the intraperitoneal part. His idea was that if you have this long subcutaneous tunnel and the catheter comes out here, the bacteria that would enter from here to the, in order to travel to enter the peritoneal cavity, they will have a long time, and that in this way the bacteria would be killed on the way. Indeed, he practiced this catheter, and he was one of the first physicians who had patients on really long-term peritoneal dialysis successfully for 25 months. The main figure and the father of peritoneal dialysis is Henrik Tenkov, who is a German who was again invited by Scribner to come and work in Seattle. So Scribner is a focal point, and Seattle is the mecca at that time of peritoneal dialysis. And Tenkov has done a number of things. One of the main things is that he took the Palmer catheter and he modified it. Instead of having that accordion type to prevent entry of the bacteria, he replaced that with two Dacron cuffs. And he had two modified cuffs. There's the intraperitoneal part, the straight, or the coiled, and this is the subcutaneous part, and from here is the external part. So there was the two Dacron cuffs that in one hand they created strong adhesions, and in this way they were anchoring the catheter in the subcutaneous tunnel. On the other hand, the bacteria could not travel from the external part through this barrier to the inside the peritoneal cavity. Now, this is the Tenkov catheter that even to this day is the most frequently used catheter, either in the coil form or the straight form. So it's a catheter that has been used at least for 60 years. There have been various modifications that I may talk later on. Tenkov also developed this trocar. That was very ingenious trocar that when I first came in Toronto in the early 70s, I used it, that has this cylinder that the catheter, after you perforate the abdominal wall, the catheter is, the Tenkov catheter is inserted. The first cuff is here, and then these two parts can be split. They can split and come apart, and then this tunnel can come out. So you are left with the catheter and the Dacron cuff here. So another development that Tenkov did in Seattle was this dialysis solution in 40-liter carboy glass containers. So he was preparing with the chemicals, and then he was sterilizing this solution overnight, and then they were bringing this to the patient's side, and then through a system of pumps, he was pumping 2 liters of this fluid up in this bag, and then this was allowed to run in by gravity into the patient's peritoneal cavity, and then after the dwell time, whatever he had decided, 20, 30 minutes, was allowed to drain out in this empty glass container. Of course, as an idea of having 40 liters in expensive solution is great, and I have seen this in practice, but of course you could not have a very large number of patients doing it. The next thing he moved on, because that was not possible, he came with these stainless steel tanks where he was filling them up with a dialysis solution that was sterilized by heat, and then the same cycler was taking the 2 liters of this solution coming up to in this compartment here, then run by gravity and then been drained. When I first came in Toronto, Dr. Fenton had bought one of these, but the heat that was produced during the night was really enough to peel off the paintings of the room. So we gave up. We didn't use it. I think that this was the most important development of Tenkov's. In collaboration with a company called Physio Control, he came up with this concept of the reverse osmosis. The concept is that the reverse osmosis filters are being used even to this day extensively to de-ionize the water, that is to remove electrolytes from the water.